noise!
Welcome back to the next part of this Truth and Rhythm episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. Also become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Enjoy. Hey, before we get started with today's show, I just want to draw your attention to new merchandise. Funkin' Stuff and Truth and Rhythm designs are in, and they look pretty darn cool. So show your support, help support the program, and show off some stylish merchandise and apparel. Only at the Funkin' Stuff store. When you're performing live, do you tend to lock in more with the bass player, the drummer, or what is it that you really sort of key into when you're doing those?
Well, arguably for me, when I toured with Robert, I think, as an aggregate, I think I did more shows with Robert than any other artist. And the most important thing was having Donnie Wynn, who's the drummer, Frank Blair, the bassist. Both of these guys are just masters at what they do, and Robert. And that, to me, as long as I heard the voice, the drums, and the bass, I was good. That's all I needed to hear. Maybe a little bit of keys, but really I needed to hear bass and drums and voice. That was the most important thing.
And would he give you more space in the live context to stretch out a little more?
Oh, big time. Robert loves surprises. So, when he would give me, moments to play, I always tried to do something that would make him chuckle, and I'd always try to take it more out, because he loved it. He loved it when I kind of, took a little bit left and maybe, created some tension with some atonality and things like that, and I love that, man. That was it. Because he loved it too. He liked to, and then every once in a while we do like an odd tune. We used to do Eat the Rich by Motorhead, which was a great tune to do live. It was totally out of character for what we were doing, but it was great because it was just, it was good to do on those kind of swanky gigs, like, where they have the
stuff shirts
and the candelabras and all that stuff, it's like, the subscription kind of venues, so it was good to do those Motorhead tunes. It was good.
When you got into like full arena mode, how many guitars were you traveling and how much gear did you have at your peak of that?
Oh, let's see. I'd probably have around 10 guitars as part of my traveling rig, and I'd have a rack, a stereo rack, and I think it was, I was pushing 800 watts, 400 watts a side stereo, a couple of Marshall cabinets, and had all my, spatial effects rack mounted, and had Marshalls and preamps and things like that. And that's an evolving process. Really funny. It's everything's gone like a full circle. But at the peak of my working with Robert, I was using a Bradshaw system that Bob Bradshaw and John Suhr had built for me, and it was great. I was able to literally program every song in the show, and there was a bank for all my sounds, and all my solo sounds and chord sounds and everything was all kind of preset. So it was very turnkey for me. And it was good in terms of consistency because I knew what I was going to be getting every night. And it was a very durable system too. It never failed me. And it was really good to get to that point, because now I think everything has gone full circle. If you looked at my equipment now, it's like it's really kind of old school. I've got, some really nice amps and cool guitars, and I've got like a pedal board, and that's pretty much it. And so the rack gear is gone, but it was fun for a minute.
What was your number one axe? What was your go-to number one?
Well, when I first started, there was a Hamer guitar. I still have it. It was my hit maker. I used that on the David Lee Roth stuff. I used it on Addicted to Love. I used it on Run-DMC's hits, and used it on Melba Moore track. I used it on a lot of stuff, and it was just a magical guitar. It sounded great. It still had definition no matter how distorted or big I got the sounds. It kept its definition. And so that's an instrument that's a special piece. But I'm primarily a Stratocaster player. I consider myself a Strat player. I have more Strats than just about any other guitar, and I just love the instrument. I think it's really Fenders make you work a little bit harder, and it's to me it's an easier way. Not an easier way, because you get to your own sound, I think, a bit easier, a bit faster, if you put the work in on a Fender, because it's much harder to get a great sound, but you can get more of a personalized sound out of the Fender, I believe. If you think of the different guitarists through the years that have gravitated towards Fenders, whether it's Hendrix,
The blues guys.
the blues guys, and that's how come I've always loved, for Gibsons, I've loved Flying V's because of Albert King. And I always felt the Flying V was the most different sounding out of the Fender guitars. It sounded like a hybrid of a Gibson and a Strat to a degree. But they're all good. They're all kind of colors that you want to use on the canvas depending on what's needed.
Who on those bills, a couple of guys, couple bands, couple players just kind of blew your socks off when you saw them take the stage on some of the shows that you did?
Oh man, Jeff Beck always blows you away. Jeff Beck is amazing, um, um, Mike Landau, great guitarist. I've seen him. Robin Ford, great musician. Always love seeing, my brothers from New York, Jimmy Hazel. Jimmy's a force, and the late Ronnie Drayton. Boy, there's something from the East Coast, man. The funk rock thing, Vernon Reid, Jimmy Hazel, Ronnie Drayton. There's some, really interesting stuff, when you think about, even on the studio side with guys like Hugh McCracken and Cornell Dupree and Eric Gales, the rhythm guitarist from New York studio scene, Eric Gale, and these cats, they played some greasy stuff, man, really significant. And it's really interesting that when you compare the different coasts, the West Coast and the East Coast, and I mean, the West Coast there's no shortage of greatness. You know what I mean? I mean, with Lukather and Landau, as I said, and and when Dan Huff was out there recording, and there's some really great players out there, and Paul Jackson Jr. Man, I mean, it's at Cats, David Williams. I mean, these are some funky cats, and Carlos Rios, some great players, great musicians, great studio musicians. So the favorite, so cool, I mean, it's so different. It's so different.
What about in terms of like one or two bands that you just thought, blew it away on the stage on some of the tours that maybe you were part of?
Prince. When I was with Lenny and we were on the bill with Rick James, and we were opening the show. We had Peanut Butter, which was a pretty big hit. I mean, that went to #2 on the R&B charts. They just could not knock out Rock With You, Michael Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
But first time I saw Prince was at the Omni in Atlanta, which was a kind of, I think it's a basketball arena. I don't know if it still exists or not, but it was a long time ago. And it was his first tour, his first major tour. I Want to Be Your Lover was out. He was making some headway up the charts. And at Soundcheck, when those cats hit, you know, with Dez and Andre Simone and Matt Fink on keys and Gail Chapman, I think her name was. I mean, and the drummer, that shit was, and Prince himself, that was a shift. I saw the future and the present when I saw them for the first time. I said, this is going to blow up. It's going to be enormous. And it did. It did. The rest is history, but I felt it. I knew that was special. Let's see, seeing The Who, being on the bill with them was really something incredible. And seeing them live was amazing. But as far as being on the bill with other acts, Emerson, Lake and Palmer killed. Oh my God, they were amazing. You know, so many great groups. You know, and I've been to so many great concerts too. When I think about it, as a kid growing up and seeing all the great bands of the time was really great. You kind of like say that's how you get your kind of like you get your foundation. You know, it's like when I was just talking about this the other day when I saw Joe Bonamassa for the first time live. I felt like I was a kid and at the Fillmore again. And because it was a great blues rock show. It was impeccably played. It killed sonically. It was just on fire. And it just really rekindles something that just, it rekindles a fire in you when you see it played so well and on that level. You know, it's a good feeling because it says, wow, this is like being at the Fillmore. You know, it's like I used to get a balcony seat, and we'd stand behind the orchestra section, like, you know, just looking over, you know, like say where the concession stands are, you know, and we're just looking over the ledge down towards the stage because it was a better vantage point. Sonically, I think it was better. So I would just stand there and see all the great shows. But and then if people left, then you'd kind of sneak in and get a seat. But those are really, really good. Those things are fundamental, you know, because they stay with you. Because when you've seen it done, that you feel is the best that you've ever seen, it kind of lingers. It kind of lingers with you, and it really sets your bar high. It's like when I put my band together, I just really wanted to make sure that the guys were playing it, that they weren't reading it, you know, and that comes from repetition and playing, you know, and so this way you're performing it and not reading it. I want it to be performed. And I says, look, man, if there's a mistake, there's a mistake. I just want the energy. If there's a mistake, you guys are professionals. You'll pick up where you left off and you'll continue. And it's like nobody will know the difference. But what I want is energy. And that's the most important thing.
Did you ever get a chance to see Duane Allman?
Never. And some of my buds saw the Allman Brothers at the Fillmore, and I regret I probably didn't have the money to see them when I was a little kid. You know, I mean, I couldn't go to every show that I wanted to, you know. But I regret not seeing the Allmans. But I had the Live at the Fillmore East. I wore that out. I mean, in memory of Elizabeth Reed. Oh man, you know, I'd love that tune. You know, and it was in heavy rotation. I had the album, but also Scott Muni in New York was playing it a lot on WNEW, you know, which was like the really progressive rock station in New York, which was just an amazing place to dial up on the radio, dial back, you know, when I was a kid.
You mentioned Jeff Beck a couple of times already, and I've always been so impressed with the way he's kept it going for such a long time, and trying new things, and he's got such a singular voicing, you know, through his instrument. Just amazing.
Yeah, it's really something when you think about. I mean, when the first time I saw Jeff Beck playing a Les Paul in Central Park, to see him, you know, playing, you know, the different stages, the rough and ready, the blow by blow era, and then the, you know, the albums with Lead Boots and the things that he was doing with Narada Michael Walden, who's an old friend and a monster artist, musician, drummer, and seeing those iterations and how he was, you know, evolving and changing. And because when I recorded with him with Jeff, he wasn't really playing with a pick anymore. He was already doing the thing that with the kind of hybrid finger picking thing that he does, you know, playing pickless, you know. So I saw that, and you know, my one regret is like where Jimmy would have gone too, you know, where he would have, because I think he was embarking on something different. I think his spirit was telling him that he had to make a shift, you know, relative to what he was saying on the instrument, because I think he had so much more to say on the instrument, and I just wish he had stayed, you know.
And there's so many great players out there. We could spend hours and hours talking about them all, and so many of them, far too many of them, are somewhat unsung. But you know,
yeah, and you know, in terms of live performances, I you know, I'm a sucker for a pop song, Scott. You know, so when I saw McCartney live at the Garden, I saw him here at the Rose Garden in Portland. That was a treat for me, because I mean, just tune after tune, just of monumental, seminal songs that you know, you can hearken to. It harkens to an experience or a memory, and hearing those back to back in sequence like that is really, it's quite a heavy experience. And you know, this last iteration of his band, I mean, he's had some really good bands, and but this current band is really killing it that he's had most recently, you know. So with Abraham Abe Laborio Jr. and you know, and the rest of the Cats, man, are just great. Brian Ray, you know, just monsters, you know, and doing it really, really great. And those songs are just, it's the spark. It goes back to the spark of what really made me want to do this.
It's so awesome too that he's still going like he is and still sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what can you say? I met Ringo and I met John. I never met Paul. Almost met George once. But those were great experiences, meeting John and meeting Ringo, for sure.
Maybe I'd like to ask the guests to come on to name their 5 Desert Island albums, 5 albums of all time, if you could only have 5 to listen to. Just gonna throw that at you. What would you say they would be?
Axis Boulder, this would be a toss-up between Axis Boulder's Love and Electric Ladyland. And I would have to throw in, oh gosh, Revolver. Sinatra in the wee small hours of the morning. That's 3. I would have to throw in Songs in the Key of Life, and maybe I think Eugene Ormandy, the Debussy album. I think that would really be I'd have to throw in some Miles there too. between that and maybe Sketches of Spain, or, you know, 6.
I've had some people throw in a 6, so yeah. It's interesting on so many of the shows I've done. I mean, Miles is just a fixture in so many of the top 5s, and Hendrix too, often. But really interesting to me to hear how many folks, you know, reference Miles, especially coming from a funk or a rock or a jazz context. Well, not that kind of jazz, but, you know, like more of the smooth jazz or something like that. And still Miles is the guy, you know?
Yeah, you know, in my household, my older brother, you know, he was listening to everything. You know, there's a lot of Latin music in my house, you know, because my parents love to listen to the greats of Latin music: Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, Eddie Palmieri, all the, you know, the greats. To me, the 60s really one of the most golden eras of Latin. Um, but when I think about my brother, because, you know, he had, you know, Tony Bennett, Miles Davis, Bob Dylan, Sun Ra, Stan Getz. That was all being played, you know, so that was all, you know, weaving in around. Uh, that was the atmosphere in our house, as well as the traditional Latin music, which is foundational, you know, in my family, you know. So, and then you throw in the Beatles in there, and then Hendrix and stuff, and then, you know, that's my that these are my foundations, you know, as a musician and everything, and in terms of what moved me. But I love classical music. I love some opera too. I mean, you know, Tosca to me is a perfect opera, you know, and Turandot, some arias on that are just amazing. You know, I love Puccini, let's put it that way, you know, and but yeah, I mean, it's just, and it's, you got to listen to all the stuff. You got to listen to all of it, you know, because there's some interesting nuggets, you know, and if you're not checking that stuff out, man, you know, some of that magic's not going to rub off on you, you know.
Yeah, well, and the best artists are usually, my favorites are the ones that have brought in that broad spectrum of influences and then distilled it into whatever they do. But
Yeah,
it's those diverse influences that help make their music so colorful, even if it's in a certain genre.
yeah, it's interesting. You know, a friend of mine, Lyle Workman, who's this brilliant guitarist and does film scores and everything.
Super bad.
He's great. His latest album, it's just, well, all of his records are just really outstanding. But his most recent effort is really, it's brilliant. And you know, we've known each other for a while. When I was touring with Robert, he was in a band called Bourgeois Tag, and they opened up for us, you know, for a good while on the tour, and we've been friends ever since. But what he's doing right now is just really spectacular. It's really just beautiful music, complex, but there's a beauty there, and he's playing with such grace. It's beautiful.
So your most recent record,
Yeah.
um, you know, why did it take so long? And you know, was it you know, 10 years in the making, or what's the story behind it?
No, no, actually, I moved out here and I had just gone through a divorce. It was really, uh, um, I was at my nadir when I moved out here, you know, and it just took me that amount of time to really kind of gather myself up to, okay, let's do this. And thankfully, my wife, Sarah, you know, just really kind of, you know, kicked me in the butt. Just put your band together, do some gigs, and I want you to do something, you know, do it. And I did. I went into the studio, started cutting. I had Carmine Rojas fly up and Tal Bergman, and ostensibly we cut it as a trio. And then I had Ramsey Embick and John Mazzacco help out, and Jose Rossi, a great percussionist, formerly of Weather Report, and play percussion on some tracks. And and I then my mom passed away after I'd cut most of it. I'd been through some of the overdubs. My mom passed, and I put the brakes on for a few months just to really kind of process. And then got back to it and put it out. I think I put it out in 18, you know, the summer of 2018. and really happy with the record. I'm really happy with the record. Um, it's a record that I felt I needed to get out. I needed to. This is music that I really just needed to get out of my system, you know. And it was really cathartic making that record. It was really an interesting journey for me. When I think about how different it was doing this solo album as opposed to the album that Bernard produced for me, it's like I'm producing it, you know. So recording it and I'm producing it with my engineers respectively, and Tony Phillips, who did an incredible job mixing the record, and Brandon Eggleston, and all the engineers, Justin Phelps, who helped out with the recording, and Howie Weinberg, who also mastered the record, did a great job. So I had some really incredible help there. But it was a really cathartic experience for me, because I would just, you know, it's right. So it's, you know, you put up some bitchin' tracks and then it's okay, now we need to get to the real substance. What's to the heart of the matter? What do I want to say? You know, because there's a lot of vocals. I did venture into some instrumentals. There are a few instrumentals on there, but generally there's some lyrics, and I just wanted to say some things, you know. So, and I just really worked hard on the lyrics to kind of convey sentiments that you know, that I felt were important to me, but really kind of say it in a way, or conveyed lyrically, rather than it's not kind of like in a literal, you know, in a literal fashion. I wanted to be a little bit more shaded in a way with language and metaphors and things like that, you know, to convey certain things, you know. So I'm happy with how that came out. And there's some songs that are just blatant rockers and real kind of simplistic lyrics as well, which is fun too, you know. I dig it all, you know. So it's been good, and I was happy with the process. It was a labor of love, and so it was good. I'm very happy with the way that record came out.
As you should be. Congratulations on it, Eddie.
Thank you.
It's highly enjoyable and varied, and I think, you know, like we were talking about with all those diverse influences musically, you know, you can hear so much of it coming out in this record. You know, it just kind of goes all over the place, really.
Yeah, and that was purposely done that way, because when I think about it, it's like in years past, you'd have to deal with a record label, and you'd have to deal with an A&R guy, and the politics therein, you know. And for me, it's like my own label. I'm just recording it, I'm doing it, I'm producing it myself, I'm financing it myself, and you know, I don't give a rat's ass what's going to be on it, you know. And you know, and that's the way it came out. So I'm really happy about that. You know, it's like right now my mission is to put music out, content. I just want to really just keep producing and putting music out, and just put it out there for people to enjoy, you know, and see what happens. So right now I've got a bunch of not a bunch, like maybe a handful of songs that I recorded 25 years ago that are all cut analog. I transfer them to Pro Tools sessions, and going to freshen those up. I'm going to put out like maybe a couple of singles or an EP. And I've been writing over the past year for a new studio album, you know. So those are the two things that I'm focused on right now.
Wow, looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be different. It's going to be different from the first album. So I'm looking forward to it big time. Yeah, I'm going to go deeper into just maybe a bit more expression. I think people are dying for stories, Scott. I think stories are really, really important. I think people just need to hear stories that other than their own. And I think I want to try to put some stories together in music.
In this record, I don't want to butcher the name again. Can you say it again?
Akosua.
Akosua, yeah. So how old is your daughter?
No, that's my wife's middle name.
Oh, your wife. Okay,
yes. So I did have a daughter from my first marriage, and she's got a birthday tomorrow. She's an attorney at law, and she's practicing and, you know, kicking ass.
Okay, so you know, did your wife know that you were going to name it after her? Was it a surprise, or?
Um, I told her that there was a song called Akosua, and I was going to title the album after that song, because I felt that that song was the one track, and it's instrumental too. It There were certain songs that were more prepared than others, and we Carmine and Tao, where they were going through songs, we were going through songs really quickly, and like I still had a lot of time to record. I said, "What else you got?" I says, "Oh man, I got this song it's incomplete." So I says, "Man, take a break for like 20 minutes." And I got some paper down, and I just like put the tune together, while they were taking a break, and completed the song instrumentally, and it just became a theme. And I'm really happy with the way that piece came out. There's some really interesting modulations there, and the textures and the melody, and Jose did this kind of percussion thing at the beginning, and my father-in-law did a spoken word in Twi, and he's speaking to the ancestors, at the beginning and in the middle. So it really came out. So I was so happy with that, in terms of how something that was incomplete when I began, just in the heat of the moment, in an environment that you put your pen to paper and you complete it and you put it down, and then you build on that, and something that transcends the initial thought. It is really it's a good feeling, really good feeling.
Yeah, you have some colorful titles too, like Rogue Chimps and
Yeah, rogue chimps, man. I saw this documentary on Animal Planet about like chimps that just go off on their owners and stuff. And I mean, that scared the shit out of me, man. That was like some weird ass shit, man. I mean, chimps biting their owners' fingers off, or pulling their faces off, and I mean, it's just like some ugly ass shit, So I wanted to put together a tune that kind of like, it's kind of like an outside kind of angular kind of metal.
it rocks. Yeah.
Thing, thank you, and it was nasty. So I just wanted to call it Rogue Chimps.
Love it. So how long do how quick are you in the recording process? Are you quick at that, or are you really really take your time?
Um, the tracks, all the tracks were relatively recorded quickly. I recorded most of the tracks in Portland, then went down to LA, where we cut with Carmine and Charlie Drayton and Philippe Sace, and we knocked out a few tracks, and in a day, less, I mean, just I think it was in there for like 8 hours, and we knocked out 3 tracks, and then I brought them back to Portland, and then it was just me, my engineer, and the studio, because all the tracks were cut. So the tracks were cut in just a matter of, I think the music for all the songs were cut in several days, 4 days, 5 days, maybe altogether. And then I took my time with the overdubs and my vocals. And I just, did it at my leisure. So all the tracks were cut in, 5 days. And then the overdubs, I took my time with the overdubs. I would go in maybe once a week for like, 8 hours or so, like that, and just did it, and focused. Was really, wanted to be laser focused on how I approached it. And sometimes you can overthink things, and maybe I did overthink some things, but I was really happy with the way it turned out. Then the vocals are another thing, because I did all the background vocals myself, so all the layering stuff. I love doing that stuff. It's really, it's a lot of fun to do. And then I think with the lead vocals, I was really kind of hard on myself. So I was really critical, much more critical on my vocals and on my solos, I believe. And because I think I hadn't put a record out in so long, and I wanted to do something a little special, and so yeah, I gave that some extra time.
And where do you stand with, sessions work and, what's your status with that?
I'm about to launch a website. I'm still open for sessions, but it's not something that I'm seeking, so I'm not really doing many sessions at all. I'm just really about my own music right now. And I think the session scene is ostensibly kind of like a very practically non-existent. I mean, I think sessions for me would be, okay, send me your files and I'll put some guitars down and I'll send you the files back and an invoice. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's where it's at, and it's sad. I feel sad saying that, that it's really that the aspect of a collaborative experience and the spontaneity that happens when you're working with players in a recording environment, and it's really the exception and not the rule that happens, and it's unfortunate.
What would you say was like the last year thereabouts, when you were very actively still doing sessions?
Oh, it's been a while. I think, I think I've done some sessions since I moved away from New York, but I don't think I've really done many recording sessions in the last 20 years. You know, Here and there, a couple of projects. I did something for the Portland Trailblazers. I wrote their playoff music. Um, did some TV shows. When Letterman was doing the show, I subbed for Sid for a few weeks. And I flew back to do the 2000th show. That's quite a while ago. Early 2000s, maybe 2003 or something like that. I went back to work on a record. Oh gosh, great songwriter. But I went back to work on his record, and did some Meatloaf stuff actually in LA. Not I don't know how long ago that was, maybe 8-10 years ago, something like that. But really, it's a shadow of what it used to be, and I'm okay with that.
Do you get out and play around Portland at all, or?
I do. Prior to COVID hitting, I have a band, and we haven't done a gig in a couple of years, believe it or not. I can't believe it's that long, but I loved having a band, and because it really kind of developed another muscle for me, in terms of, okay, this is my band, I'm singing and I'm playing guitar, and it's a whole different muscle that you need to develop in terms of really singing and playing at the same time, and playing. It was great. It was great fun. And I was just, up until incorporating my original music, I was just doing covers that I wanted to do. Like if I wanted to cover a Bebop Deluxe tune, or a Jeff Beck tune or a Hendrix tune or whatever it was, I would just do it. And, and that was fun when it's like, I'm playing what I want to play, and and people come, and that's a good feeling, because I always try to give the people a really good show. I really, I really like to create an environment and an experience for people with songs, and going back to the aspect of stories. I'll speak to the audience relative to the significance of a song. Like say if I do Further On Up the Road, I remember being at the Last Waltz. I was in San Francisco that night in the theater at Winterland when Eric Clapton came up and sat in with the band and did Further On Up the Road. So that's really interesting, creating a story from an experience, and just explaining what that song means to me, and I'm going to do it the way that I do it for you now. And those kind of things are really important. And I think people want to hear that kind of connection, that kind of connectivity that we all have. And it's a really fascinating journey that I've been on, and I know it's that way for a lot of my friends too that are still out there doing it. There's a beauty to it. There's certain things that you can't really explain in words in terms of what it means to you. There are things that just kind of like idiomatically kind of impossible to convey. But there's an emotion that streams through us doing what we do, doing what we love to do. That I think that if people can tap into that through your music or a part of it, it makes it for so much more of an enriching experience for them. And that's, to me, that's what enables for you to have a foundation of people that will come and check you out because they feel what you're doing.
When you look back, Eddie, what are you most proud of accomplishing in your music career, would you say?
I think early on, Scott, I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to play, before I had any success at all, what I wanted to do is I wanted to play on records that other guitarists would probably have to learn how to play what I played. I didn't want to play incessantly in clubs playing top 40 music. I could have done that and not really pursued the path less taken. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be playing in clubs forever. I mean, not to disparage playing clubs. Clubs are great, and clubs is probably all that's left unless you're one of the elite groups. So clubs are a facet that are so needed right now, which is really sad. But I wanted to do something different, and that was playing on records. I wanted to play on records, not for the ego of having other people necessarily, even though that's a feather in a cap. But I wanted to understand the process of recording and what it takes to make something great. And I think I've learned that, and that I was relentless in terms of my stick-to-itiveness with my approach and what I wanted to do. And when you have that kind of belief that you're going to do it, I mean, you start attracting some really interesting stuff when you're ready, and people, all I tell people is like, if you stick to it, you're going to get that call. Make sure that you're ready when you do get that call, And another thing to be aware of is that the calls are going to stop. The calls do stop. It's a part of ebb and flow. It's kind of like, I don't know whether it's youth serving youth or something like that, that they want the young bloods in there, and that's cool, even though I feel I'm playing better than I was playing when I was 18 or 19 or in my 30s, But there's an energy, I guess, that they're looking for that they find interesting or whatever. But there's not much new stuff that's really thrilling me, and I hate to, I don't want to be the old curmudgeonly person that's saying, "Oh, that shit sucks." No, there's some really brilliant stuff. There's some really brilliant players that are doing things that that are mind-boggling. But there's not much stuff out there that's given me goosebumps. That is just impacting me like a Stevie Wonder album or a Jeff Beck album or a Hendrix album or a Beatle album. And I want that. I want that kind of stuff that transcends. And that's what I'm looking for. So, pardon my curmudgeonliness.
Well, one thing for sure, if it is out there, the record companies probably aren't the ones that are putting it out there. You got to dig and hope to find it somewhere out there on the internet, probably.
Yeah, you have to. And there's some. I remember hearing oh gosh, what's his name? Gavin DeGraw. I remember hearing him. James Dean, I was working on a record in New York, and James Dean, a record executive, says, "I'm going to bring this young kid who's a really gifted writer. I want you to hear him. We just signed him." So he comes down to the studio, and this was in New York. This was early 2000s, and he sits down at the piano. He sang like 2 or 3 songs, and I was just like, wow. And Gavin is really extraordinary, right? He's had great success. He's a great writer. Kid can write. And those are the moments that really put a smile on your face, man. You hear that kind of magic. It's really, really, really good. And it's out there. I just don't know what holds, I guess things just need to kind of figure themselves out, I think, relative to whether it's how writers and publishers and streaming and the monetization of music needs to get on track. I can't believe that things have devolved you know, to a degree that, you know, that people hearken back to the golden era of traditional radio and CDs and cassettes and vinyl as the golden days of being able to make money from the sales of records. I'm not saying it isn't being made now, but with the exceptions, you know, the exceptions are the ones that are just like, you know, going through the roof relative to the streaming aspects and getting billions of downloads or whatever it is. It just seems to be a very kind of, things need to be kind of recalibrated, I believe, for this business. And I don't know how that's going to be figured out or who's going to figure it out, but it really needs to be, because you figure that things would get better relative to monetization when they've gotten worse. And it shouldn't be that way, not in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's interesting as I'm listening to you talk about that, and I totally agree. It's interesting to think about also how there's this movement on the other side back to vinyl albums, you know, when you had so much more substance to the experience and the packaging, you know, with liner notes and pictures and things that were more tangible, and you could really feel it in a physical sense. And, you know, maybe if there's that happening, we can also move to a place where the artists themselves are getting more of what they deserve for the art they're creating and not getting marginalized, because they marginalized, you know, the way it's presented through just digital files in terms of that overall experience.
Yes.
And, you know, the vinyl albums help keep some of that alive in the way they're presented. So, you know, I'm not sure if I'm connecting the dots all that well, but it seems to me.
No, I think, you know, it's the experience. When you think of the experience of getting your first album, you know, it's like when I Revolver, my first LP, you know, and I saved up my shekels to get that bad boy, you know what I mean? And, you know, I still have it. I still have that album. I still have Are You Experienced? These things are treasured. And, you know, and when I was dreaming about being a session musician, and I go to see, oh, who's playing on that, man? Oh shit, that's Mike Landau, and you know, and wow, Landau, Lukather, you know, it's like, and then on the East Coast, who's playing on this? You know, it's like, oh man, it's just you know, it's amazing. Steve Kahn, oh man, Steve Kahn's on this track, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, Elliot Randall's on this one, and you know, oh man, it's like, you know, that stuff kind of excited you, because when you did have a chance to meet them, I remember, you know, one of the first times well, I've known Elliot Randall since the 70s when he used to play in Sha Na Na, you know, and but I remember meeting him, you know, several years later, you know, after the Royal Scam, you know, when the Royal Scam came out, you know, and asking him about Haitian divorce, you know, and you get to meet these people, you know, and it's like, oh man, you know, and you talk to them about the experience. And I remember meeting Chuck Rainey and asking him about the, you know, the Royal Scam album as well. I bumped into him. I only met him once, but I was at Local 47 in Los Angeles, and asked him about the recording process. He says, "Oh man, we literally made that album twice." He said something like that. You know, we literally made the entire album twice. You know, and it makes you think about the process and how arduous and hard they worked, you know, to make those masterpieces, you know. So it's really, it's and that's that tactility. You get the record, you're looking at the record, or you get the CD. Remember when people were complaining about CDs? Oh man, the artwork is going to be diminished and stuff. Now I mean I'd love to see a CD, you know what I mean? Now it's a file, and there's no information on the file of, you know, who or what, and the engineers. I want to know who the engineers were, you know.
Yeah, everyone in the process is marginalized through that. You know, but to me, always albums matter. Being able to bring it live matters.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and you know, yeah, I love playing live too, because that's a whole other muscle too, you know, and so much fun to do. And when you get in a groove on a live thing, you know, this is how hard we used to work with Robert. I mean, there was one leg of a tour that was 56 shows in 56 days,
Wow.
56 venues in different cities, and we were working. and that was there was a heat wave in the States in '88, and we were touring through that heat wave, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. I mean, there's something about once those lights go down and you're about to hit that stage, man, you may feel a little lacking in energy, but once the lights go down and the spots are up, man, it's like, whoa, let's go out there, and the energy comes back. I guess it's part of being young. But amazing moments.
Well, I'm so glad you're able to share a lot of those amazing moments with me and the viewing audience and coming on the show.
You.
It's been a pleasure, Eddie. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Scott. Appreciate that.
I wish you all the luck. So how can folks keep up with what you might have coming out and that sort of thing? Is there a place they can go to?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram, and soon going to be launching my website. So there'll be a lot more information once that once it's launched. So I'm looking forward to that, and there'll be other ways to get in touch with me through the website relative to sessions and things like that, or one-on-one lessons. Even though I don't consider myself a teacher, but I call it more consultation, if you want, and want to talk about things relative to guitar and tone and things like that. I'm there, and an instruction as well.
Excellent. Pass it on. Don't keep it to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, take good care, and
thank you much.
Best of the holidays to you.
You too, Scott. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Truth in Rhythm. A big thank you goes out to our guest as well as to you, the viewer and listener. Also, much gratitude to Pleasure for supplying the show's funky opening and closing music. As a reminder, you can always access the complete list of linked shows by episode at funkandstuff.net. I urge you to support this program and receive the extra benefits along with that by subscribing to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube and sharing it with funk, R&B, and jazz lovers, joining Truth and Rhythm's membership program at Patreon, submitting a donation at funkandstuff.net, buying Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk book at Amazon, shopping at the Funky Things store for cool merchandise at funkandstuff.net, and linking through funkandstuff.net for all of your Amazon purchases. In addition, if you're an artist or anyone seeking proven, results-oriented professional marketing, PR, writing, or editing consultation or production, check out the media services section at funkandstuff.net. Also, I encourage you to drop me a line at scottg@funkandstuff.net. I love the feedback, suggestions, guest requests, appearance and sponsorship inquiries, and just talking about my favorite subject, groove-based music. For now, and as always, this is Scott Dr. GX Goldfine saying, keep on vibing to the rhythm of the one.